This is not just another talk show. It's the pulse check of a working continent. The job market, where policy meets people and numbers meet names. From factories to futures, from data to dignity. We don't just count jobs, we build them. The job market, only on Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover. Hello Africa! Want to stay plugged into the world of work? Follow us at Career Indaba on LinkedIn, Instagram and X and dive deeper at careerindaba.org. The conversation becomes a movement. The idea becomes an economy. This is not another event. It's an activation of Africa's potential. The Career Indaba Expo and Bootcamp 2026, where 5,000 delegates, 100 exhibitors and 20 bootcamp zones collide to create the future of work. From youth innovators to corporate pioneers, from township traders to global brands, every voice counts. 2 days, one goal. Aligning Africa's skills with its opportunities. Career Indaba Expo and Bootcamp 2026. 15th to 16th May, Sandton Convention Center, where skills meet, where Africa works. Career Indaba Channel, the voice of Africa's labor market. Career Indaba, real voices, real change, real opportunity. This is not just another talk show. It's the pulse check of a working continent. The job market, where policy meets people and numbers meet names. From factories to futures, from data to dignity. We don't just count jobs, we build them. The job market, only on Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover. This is not just another talk show. It's the pulse check of a working continent. The job market, where policy meets people and numbers meet names. From factories to futures, from data to dignity. We don't just count jobs, we build them. The job market, only on Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover. This is not just another talk show. It's the pulse check of a working continent. The job market, where policy meets people and numbers meet names. From factories to futures, from data to dignity. We don't just count jobs, we build them. The job market, only on Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover.
Morning. Good morning, everybody. Morning, everyone. And welcome to day one of Indaba Week. It is going to be a bumper-packed week filled with incredible content and speakers giving you a lot of insight into our market and what. Some information, some data to think about, and we'll put it into context as we go along through this week. So we all know that South Africa has an unemployment crisis fundamentally, but it's interesting to have a look at us relative to the rest of the world. And are currently overall not taking into account specifically youth unemployment. South Africa is sitting at approximately 33.2%. And this covers most of the LMSs, the earning groups. If we compare ourselves to other countries, as an example, in Switzerland has one of the lowest rates of unemployment. And in the highest income category, it only sits at about 2.4%. In comparison, some of the developing countries globally, Sudan has the highest rate at about 58%. So given that we think we're in a crisis, comparatively to some other emerging countries, we're tracking a little bit lower. Is it a good thing? No. Do we still have an absolute crisis? Yes, we do. Having a look at other African countries, middle income comparisons such as Nigeria are sitting at about 22.6%. It is interesting, however, to think about the fact that Africa in particular holds one of the highest working aged population, as opposed to in countries like China, where their working population is as close to retirement age as possible. And that means that skilled Africans are uniquely placed to tap into markets where their skills are required and where they don't yet have the numbers of working populations that are required. What does this mean? It really is a matter of understanding where the growth areas in our markets are. And that's not just South Africa specifically. It is internationally where talent can be accessed from South Africa. And quite frankly, talent from Africa is very sought after. We are very skilled as employees. We typically have an exceptionally good work ethic. And from that perspective, we also have a very fair labor price. And when I say fair labor price, I'm talking about competitively to the rest of the market. So if we have a look at markets that are emerging and perhaps where we could be utilizing our youth and perhaps keeping tabs on so that education of the future is geared towards growing in emerging markets, we might be in a better place to impact our unemployment. So if we have a look at it, there's a lot of growth in agro processing, high value crops and exports. And so there's a number of sectors and industries around that space that lend itself to skills from South Africa. In fact, it is such high demand that Tshwane University have very recently expanded their qualifications to include forestry, because there are a lot of new forestry businesses or sectors cropping up, particularly in areas like Mbombela, PE, down in Knysna, in the Western Cape, Eastern Cape areas. And so they've decided to expand that to give students greater access to one of those markets. Investment in infrastructure, including roads, railways, and ports, has been crucial across the world and is now attracting really significant capital. Whereas in the past, these kinds of professions were perhaps not as sought after. In countries like New Zealand, artisans are absolutely critical to their economy. And given the state of their natural disasters and need for rebuild, these are once again skills that are highly marketable internationally. Healthcare and education. There is a growing demand for quality healthcare services. And in countries such as the Netherlands and Germany, there is a shortage of healthcare professionals. And they are looking to other countries in the world with similar qualifications and registration processes to utilize skills that are available to us. Additionally, their skills are again heading towards the older populations, and they're looking to bring in younger people into these health and educational sectors. There are a number of countries such as the UK, Thailand, a lot of the Eastern countries that are in dire need of English-speaking teachers. We're not talking about just the TEFL level 1, but qualified, experienced teachers to not only teach English, but a number of other subjects in an English language. Huge environment. We talk about unemployed teachers here. It is an area in which that can be capitalized on in a big way. Natural resources, mining remains important. Lithium and cobalt industries are growing. There's a growing demand for gas specialists. There's a number of projects within the African continent where gas is particularly of value. Once again, where mining has closed down in certain sectors within South Africa and companies have pulled out of the market, your transferable skills or a little bit of upskilling could work wonders into moving into sectors that are within the natural resources space, highly valuable. The textile industry is growing significantly of late, and especially in the export processing zones. If you think about the number of sites that South Africans now have access to in textile and clothing, even though that is a debate on its own, it is evident that that is a growing market. The consumer and retail markets have also grown exponentially. A lot of large and useful demographic in those demographics, huge demand for household goods, food, pharmaceuticals. All of those industries are something worth considering and looking into. There is definitely primary growth sectors, as I said, in agriculture and agri-processing. You could look to the IT sector. Fintech is a definitely growing economy. And in Africa, in fact, fintech is currently a $2.8 trillion economy. And there are a lot of countries in emerging markets in West Africa that are most definitely tapping into fintech and IT resources from Africa. Top sectors are still in the last little while seen on Africa is human capital investments in education and pharmaceuticals, as I've said. But there is also a huge demand for African resources, youth graduates within the BPO sector. Countries such as Kenya and Nigeria have developed some really incredible software services around the BPO sector. And there are a number of organizations that are creating massive seat call center BPO environments where youth can tap in, where they can access programs that would develop skills that would allow them to work for international companies remotely. Nobody has forgotten the gig economy, and I think now more than ever we have seen international competition on this front, and specifically within that IT sector. Many of our developers are utilized internationally on projects, as opposed to even 5 years ago or just before COVID. Indian and Ukrainian IT developers were highly sought after. Now we are seeing the South African market being far more competitive in that space. So, what does that mean for us? I think it means that we need to start gearing our youth specifically to thinking beyond the formal job sector within South Africa. They need to start looking at their qualifications and their upskilling and their continuous development within the context of opportunities available worldwide, whether those be part-time, whether those be full employment for other countries, whether those be projects, whether those be gig economies, or whether in fact it might mean that they need to relocate to other countries. It's very heartening to see that our government has also started to make some strategic alliances with other countries. As an example, very recently, our government sent over a lot of construction and artisan workers to Ireland. Ireland, as you know, had a housing crisis, and there was a huge demand for new build of housing in Ireland. And our government created a strategic alliance with the Irish government and allowed us to utilize an entire market of resources that were available in our market for gain in the Irish space. Very heartening to see. And while the YES program and internships and the like are doing some incredible work to give our youth work integrated learning or some work opportunities that will develop real work skills, again, there is only so much that can go around. And that is why I think you see some interesting initiatives being done within the entrepreneurial space. UNISA, as an example, are driving a massive project where they are looking at how they can build entrepreneurial skills and mindsets within every single faculty of their university, and are encouraging, and there are lots of adoptions of similar programs in other universities. These are highly sought after skills, not just for people who are looking to start own businesses, but an entrepreneurial mindset is critical to corporate businesses. And it is definitely something that is going to build momentum as we go along. Certainly in South Africa, SMEs are seen as generating significant impact in our GDP. And as a result, it is very important that we develop entrepreneurs earlier on and support these entrepreneurs to grow businesses, to develop content that would see them supported from a corporate perspective. If that is the case, and some of the CSI spend is potentially spent in these places, we could see a growing SME market that could potentially employ other people, whether that be seasonally or from a scarce skills capacity. But it is certainly a sector that is worthy of consideration if we look at the greater picture of the state of employability in South Africa. This morning specifically, we're going to have a look at this from a number of angles, both from the youth space and how we can potentially develop our youth better, how we can equip them to stand out a little bit, And then, of course, we're going to consider it from a senior to middle management kind of perspective, where the issues are vastly different, but issues nonetheless that we will give you tips on how to potentially increase your movability or your potential to move within that space. It remains that education is a primary or fundamental base on which we need to operate. And I do believe that that goes from our youth right up into our senior executive leadership. AI has certainly had an impact, and I think that there needs to be a lot more formal education around AI, the utilization of AI, the optimization of AI, where AI can be used to both streamline and develop businesses. I do believe we need to be teaching fundamental entrepreneurship skills, and I'm really pleased to see that there are programs in place. If I had a magic wand and I could make a wish, it would be that corporate spaces invest more in small supplier development, that they really actively seek out and establish programs that would help facilitate the growth of small businesses, the formalization of what some consider side hustles, and certainly into assisting these businesses to become registered compliant entities that could be utilized within the greater market. So lots of interesting stuff to be done, lots of topics that can be covered, certainly a lot to think about. And I know that further in the week, we can be touching on some of this. There's an SME segment coming up. There's going to be a lot of content where a lot of this can be talked about. So I hope you are going to be tuning in through the week, and certainly for the rest of the morning, as we have some very interesting topics all around this. Lastly, maybe what I could say is we need to look for opportunity. Sometimes opportunity doesn't come to us. And I think we need to be more curious as individuals, as institutions, as corporates, as a country. We need to be more curious about what it is that we can be doing, how we can contribute, how that we can give back, what it is that we need to learn and develop to have sustainable growth within South Africa. And I genuinely believe South Africa is very uniquely placed to see such growth, to see the types of industry change that would allow us to be sustainable in the marketplace. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I hope you are too. And let's get into it in a few minutes.
This is not just another talk show. It's the pulse check of a working continent. The job market, where policy meets people and numbers meet names. From factories to futures, from data to dignity. We don't just count jobs, we build them. The job market, only on Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover. The conversation becomes a movement. The idea becomes an economy. This is not another event. It's an activation of Africa's potential. The Career Indaba Expo and Bootcamp 2026, where 5,000 delegates, 100 exhibitors, and 20 bootcamp zones collide to create the future of work. From youth innovators to corporate pioneers, from township traders to global brands, every voice counts. 2 days, one goal. Aligning Africa's skills with its opportunities. Career Indaba Expo and Bootcamp 2026. 15th to 16th May, Sandton Convention Center, where skills meet, where Africa works. If unemployment is a crisis, now what? We are moving from talk to action. Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover, a 5-day live broadcast activation from 27 to 31 October 2025, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily. Hosted by Career Indaba board members leading Africa's biggest conversations on employment, skills, youth empowerment, and inclusive growth. Bring a pledge, a placement, or a partnership. Catch us live on careerindaba.org and all our social media platforms. Career Indaba, the voice of Africa's labor market. Career Indaba, where skills meet opportunity. Join the movement.
Morning again. Welcome if this is your first, if you've just tuned in. I'm Gita Winter. I'm covering the state of employability this morning, and my first guest is Connie, and we're going to be chatting about her vision for Impact Week and what it is that we can look forward to this week. Welcome, Connie.
Good morning, Gita.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's so lovely to see you again.
It's an absolute pleasure to join you as well.
So this is your brainchild, and what a great idea this is. What a lovely bunch of topics that are going to give us some real insights into what is going on. And it's great to allow us board members to take over and to host on your behalf and to have a bunch of interesting guests, diverse topics that are going to give us some amazing insights. So tell us a little bit about your vision for Impact Week.
Thank you so much, Gita. You mentioned that this is my brainchild. I just want to say this would not be possible without the community that I'm surrounded with. I'm supported by an amazing board that has recently joined the organization to really bring Career Indaba to life. And I'm really grateful to every single board member, including what I call friends of Career Indaba. We've got people behind Career Indaba who are really inspired and really want to support this organization. And I believe that Career Indaba is not my brainchild, it is the country's brainchild and the continent's brainchild. It is inspired by, us being able to find solutions to some of the challenges that we have. I'm inspired by the power of media in terms of how it can be used for really solving and working together and bringing together key stakeholders to solve for some of the pain points and some of the real issues that are facing not only South Africa, but also the continent. I'm an HR practitioner by profession. I'm not a broadcaster at all. I know nothing about broadcasting other than just loving talk radio. And I'm really inspired and passionate by our country. I believe we've got a lot of talented people. However, on a quarterly basis, we look forward to hearing how we are tracking in terms of unemployment. And I know currently there's a lot of debate on whether we are currently sitting on double-digit unemployment or single-digit. And that's a conversation to be had. And we need to really understand deeply what does it mean. So when we talk about informal economy, the formal economy, what does it mean when we talk about the entrepreneurs, SMEs? How does it all come together when we actually talk about unemployment? For me, really, the big drive is that of making sure that everyone is involved, is included in the economy. So economic participation for me is very, very important. I'll tell you why. Issues of poverty and hunger is what drives me. If everyone is participating in the economy, issues of hunger and poverty in the continent can really be eradicated. How do we do that? I don't have the answers. I'm surrounded by amazing people, and I believe South Africa has got a lot of smart people, smart leaders, young, old, seasoned, you name it. We can come up with solutions on how to end, if not reduce, the rate of unemployment, especially the rate of unemployment in the youth sector. So Kede Indaba focuses on all things employment, all things skills development, as well as understanding the labor market, because not all of us understand how the labor market ticks and how the labor market really influences this economy to thrive. So yeah, that's Kede Indaba for me, and that's the vision, and that's my passion. For me, the end in mind is to make sure that everyone economically.
It's really interesting that we talk about all things employment and understanding labor market, because even at a very basic level, there's a different opinion on whether I'm employed or unemployed. I've spoken to a number of people who go, I don't have a job, but I earn money through my side hustle. And some of us might consider that not being employed or contributing to economy, and yet some people don't view that. Some of these people are making significant income, and one would argue that that's a business that could and that potentially employs people, and those kinds of interpretations, let's put it that way, certainly should impact the numbers that we see as unemployed individuals.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, if and this is my definition of unemployment. If people are not participating in the financial economical inclusion, then I would define that as you're not employed. But how we report what we report, for me, it's a conversation we need to have with SASDA, leaders across the country, industry, organized labor, people who really would give more insight into how do we then, define what is unemployment. Earlier this year, I had the privilege of having a one-on-one interview with the Statistician General, and he's got some very interesting insights, and the work that they do is absolutely amazing. I think in the continent, we are the only country, based on the research that I've done, we are the only country in the continent that really does a lot of work in terms of gathering information on unemployment, labor market, and so forth. I try to look across. I think other countries are doing it, but I think we are leading in terms of that. Therefore, it places us in a much better position to really understand the landscape. And if people are earning, but they're still struggling to access medical aid, to access healthcare, to access education, to access better living conditions, then let's understand what else we are dealing with, and maybe it's not unemployment. But for me, the reality is, as a recruiter as well, I know you are a veteran recruiter, as a recruiter as well, the amount of unemployed graduates is high. I'm not talking from numbers, or I'm talking from experience. I do graduate recruitment, I do executive recruitment. The number of young people unemployed, it is high. That's a given. Everyone knows that. My big question is, now what? From what I've gathered and what I've noticed is that a lot of the graduates, they're qualified in specific qualifications, but then the labor market, the clients we are serving, they're not looking for those graduates. And funny enough, employers are now starting to look more for artisans from the TVET colleges and all of that. And one needs to understand, how is that landscape changing? Besides the obvious need in areas of technology, AI, cybersecurity, digital marketing skills, those are like we know those are high in demand. We know the top 100, top 10 skills that are in demand, but that's not necessarily what we are training for. So supply and demand is just mismatched. We producing a hell of a lot more qualifications that are really not needed by the labor market. Career Indaba is created to bring these key stakeholders under one roof: learning institutions, employers, policymakers, government, job seekers, to really have the conversation and to start making the necessary shifts, be it in how whatever curricula we need to design in the learning institutions. I know a lot of universities are really spearheading and working very closely with employers, because we need to start training for the labor market, be it in the form of going into formal employment, entrepreneurship, informal economy, whichever way. But we need to start training for that, because we just mass producing every year. I mean, this year we know that there's a lot of young ones who are sitting for their matric exams. Guess what? Come next year, or already now, they're applying for qualifications at varsities, various universities. What is informing that? What conversations are taking place between government and the learning institutions to even say, come 2026, we should not have more than X students registering for X qualifications, because the demand is looking for 1, 2, 3. I don't know. It sounds simplistic from my side, but I believe it can be done and it should be done, because it starts there.
You are so right. And there is, when you say what conversations, I'd almost hazard a guess to say zero conversations are happening in that space. And maybe that's totally my perception, right? But I spent last week training number of workshops. So I met just over 1,000 third year students last week alone. And in the room, I asked the question, what are your third years now? It's fundamentally 2 months, 3 months from employment. What are you applying for? And there weren't a definitive amount of students who actually had a clear idea of what jobs they would be applying for, what industries they'd be going into, and whether those are in fact viable positions for where we're at now. I just thought it is so interesting, because so much work gets done, and yet there's still so much work to be done. So this is a very necessary platform. It's a very necessary place to hold such important conversations. And on that, I mean, you've got broad topics this week. You've got a lovely, diverse basket of those, and I'm very sure they were intentionally crafted that way. So, what led you to some of these topics on the days that we're hosting Impact Week?
Yeah, most of the topics are really to start the conversations. The conversations are around skills development. What shape, form should we be adopting going forward, and actually be thinking about and rethinking when it comes to skills development? What skills do we need, not only for the country, but for the economy? For the economy to thrive, we need talent, we need skills. Because more often, I think we're almost planning to bring on board people from outside the continent or outside the country to serve or fill up those gaps that we have. We need to be very intentional around skills development, because that's where it starts. And it's not only at tertiary, because by the time you get to tertiary, it's a bit late. It starts from basic education. It starts from high school. I can share with you right now how shocked I was by the time my kids got to high school. Is it grade 9, 10? I still can't get used to those levels. And we were informed that you cannot take these streams because of 1, 2, 3. And when you look at it, that's where the bulk of the children must be now, they must fall into. When I did metric way back in 1995, I don't know whether I was good with mathematics and science or not. But I did mathematics, biology, science, all of that. And I failed and passed ahead. So I was allowed the opportunity to follow through with the subjects that I love because I was going to put myself through extra classes and whatever else. Currently, there's this new system where you are forced. It's a forced system. Forced system. Can you see where it starts? Everyone is forced at high school that you will and you must follow this particular stream because you didn't do well in your mathematics. Guess what? Maybe I was playful in my grade 6, 7, and 8. Now I'm ready. Now I'm going to make sure that I make it. I'm just thinking out loud. So by the time we get to universities, they've got their, or learning institutions across, they've got their minimum requirements as well. If you don't have mathematics, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't. And I'm using mathematics as an example. It can be any other subject. By the time they now leave the learning institutions, they're looking for employment opportunities. They're not employable because the market, the labor market, the employers are not looking for such. Spending 4 years of your time doing all that and only to realize that you must queue behind another, the millions of other people for you to be picked. So also there's also another element where reskilling is now becoming not a sexy thing to do, it's a must.
Yeah.
For many of us, even myself sitting here, I get very nervous when everyone says, you need to learn AI, you need to learn AI. I have to, I must. I know I must, I have to. But what happens to the majority of people who are now still left behind from the old other learning, sort of qualifications which they might have sort of acquired and so forth. And it's not only about qualifications, it's about skill. Whether you're starting a business or you are working for someone, employers are looking for people who are skilled. Starting a business, you need to be skilled because you become the administrator, the sweeper, and the CEO at the very same time. And in the working space, you should be agile. You should be able to do everything and anything with the PhD that you sit with. No more corner offices anymore. We're all doing whatever it takes to actually deliver to the business objectives.
And some of those skills are no longer just hard skills. We need to be tapping into a whole bunch of problem solving, creativity, lateral thought that arguably even 10 years ago weren't as important as they seem to be now. And I wonder how we are, like you say, it starts so far back. My kids matriculated nearly 9 years ago, and I'm still to this day looking back and go, wow, there wasn't a lot of real guidance, there wasn't a lot of development of what was important. Our LO books still talked about skipping in matric, and I go, where did we lose the plot a little bit along this way? But change takes time. It isn't something that gets done in 2 days. Like one mom or two moms go, I don't think we need to skip. I think we need to learn how to do taxes or how to run a business. But there is a lot to be done. And given your very valid input that we've got a bunch of tertiary students now that perhaps didn't have the benefit of a lot of things when they were in school. What do you think is the one thing a tertiary institution could do now to move that on a little bit?
Yeah. The opportunity and the challenge as well is that, yes, reskilling is a must. It's definitely an opportunity to make sure that those who have already started and have acquired some knowledge and information about certain concepts, reskilling is an opportunity. Problem then becomes the cost. If I have to go back to varsity and redo, take up a second or third or a fourth qualification, it's money. Who's paying for that? Who's funding it? I don't think NSFAS and other education funding organizations, they fund third, fourth. There's a cut off. There's a threshold. anyone above 35 might not really access some of these bursary opportunities, which we're going to be announcing this week. There's a lot of bursary opportunities available. So from tomorrow, please tune in to hear and understand who's offering bursaries and the closing date and some of the minimum requirements. So the challenge is that of funding. I was actually thinking the other day how much money, how much funding goes into skills development. If you think about it, every single organization, they've got their own learning and development budget. It's big. Then we've got our NSFAS, we've got all the different learning institutes. The government is, subsidizing learning. But what are we using that money for? I mean, all this money, we train then and we retrain here, and I find it to be a missed opportunity, and hence Career Indaba exists. We want to be able to support and enhance and move the country forward in terms of inviting innovative ideas that can be put out there. We don't want to talk about things. We want to talk for understanding, for alignment and all of that, and be able to say, okay, now what? How do we then move things forward? How do we shift the needle? I know we're not going to change the country and the nation and the world overnight. However, there are small things that we can do. To your question, the reskilling. We will be setting up, and in partnership with some of the organizations, we will be setting up reskilling a platform where those unemployed graduates who are looking to really change their minds about some of the programs they would have taken, and now they really want to enter the job market or the entrepreneurship space. Let's create something where reskilling can take place without them having to worry about money, access to data, access to downloading this and whatever else. So those are all the different challenges we are faced with. So reskilling for us, it's something we really, really want to be able to fund and make sure that people can access programs for free, so they can be able to re-enter the market, be it in the entrepreneurship space or in the formal job market. That will be a start in terms of addressing that massive cohort. Because we know that even though a lot of the young graduates are coming out of varsity after 3-year degree, as a recruiter, you can tell many stories. As an employer, we can tell many stories. The internship for 12 months is not enough. The 3-year degree is not enough to equip someone to be able to work and come in and add value. You need to give people 2 years, 3 years to learn how to do the work. And I know we're looking for agile, creative problem solvers. Yes, that's a must. But to learn about the organization that you're running, to learn about the department you are functioning in, and everything else, the systems and the culture and so forth. As a young graduate, you need to be orientated into that world. And it takes a village to do that. You need different people within the organization to support those individuals. You can't just bring them in and let them sink or swim. It doesn't work like that. So that's another topic which will be covered in this week around mentoring. I know I listened to this other podcast. This lady was saying, we don't need mentors, we need sponsors. And I agree with that. We need sponsors. We need people who can really take you under your wing. They take you to the meetings. They expose you to things that you've never been exposed to. That was the opportunity I was granted. I was lucky way back there, where someone I didn't even think that I had a mentor. I had a sponsor, people who can advocate for you, but for the right reasons, not because you are a person of color or anything like that, but because they see potential in you in becoming something better.
And that is a very interesting conversation, because I've always wondered why knowing that it takes long to settle into an organization, to understand its workings in order to come up with creative problems, why are we choosing our graduates for our 1-year graduate program in October of year 3? Is there not an opportunity to choose our graduates in October of year 2 and to spend to spend a year grooming them, in orientating them, giving them projects on the side during their vac, to give them that whole groundwork to come in to maximize that 1 year opportunity that we currently give them. And I suppose it's one of the things that could be considered, but I'm sure there's a whole bunch of stuff around that is a yes but and a no but. But you know what? It is something that we need to consider. You think even us, we've been in our own organization some time. We can't come up with solutions just like this on the fly all the time. And we really know our businesses. Imagine what a young grad must feel like, coming in thinking you're going to be the next creative, agile problem solver. And they're going, I don't even know where the canteen is. Never mind anything else. It's such an interesting perspective. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's go. What would you say your one suggestion to corporates would be?
In terms of employability, skills development, labor, in terms of just overall? Sure. It's difficult to point out one thing. So as Career Indaba, the one thing that I would like to say to corporates is really for the corporates to really advocate for what they need. Corporates, they know that they need skilled people coming out of this country yesterday, not tomorrow or later. Corporates need talent to build successful businesses. And if that's the pain point and the need, they must have the right conversations with the learning institutions, build relationships, be part of the solutions of making sure that we've got the skills we need right now in the country and for the future strategic plans they have. That is the one message I would have, because the issue of employability would then become lessened. Because right now they sit with vacancies open for days. We've got millions and billions of people sitting on different employment platforms looking for opportunities. But the opportunity and the skill sets we have are not matching. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but be deliberate about what you want. Build strategic relationships in making sure that your 5-year strategic plan, whatever many milestones you are planning ahead nowadays, maybe it's a 1 year, even if it's a 1 year strategy, you need good talent. And that talent is not going to come from the sky. Have to be deliberate in making sure that we mobilize the learning institutions, we mobilize policymakers, because right now we are happy to bring in students year in, year out, year in, year out. What is that doing to your organizational culture? What is that doing to that young person who came in for the year, intention, and it's done? At what point do we say, hang on a minute, we're going to bring in as an intern or as whatever, and we have an intention of making her an employee. Best we invest and invest properly, because that is the pipeline. Learnerships and internships are not used as a pipeline for future talent. And the question is, what are we using these learnerships and internships for? I'm not going to respond to that.
Okay, I'll also hold my opinion on that one to myself. But knowing that this is going to be taking time to kind of fix and work through and have conversations on, if you were to give our youth one piece of advice, when they need to start considering options other than what we determine person or formalized jobs only, corporate jobs, what would that one thing be?
Sorry, Gita, I missed that question. I just saw something pop up.
No worries. I said our youth need alternatives to just formal jobs. That's a given.
Yes.
What one piece of advice would you give them now if they're sitting in their 3rd year with no formal options right now?
I believe our youth, and across the continent, we've got talented young people in this continent, not only South Africa. Yes, South Africa, I think we are the best in the globe, but I believe being creators of products, of services, being innovators, really, for me, that's the way to go. There's a huge challenge when it comes to innovating and creating. It's funding. There's no place out there that really is willing to fund everyone. Just trying to get funding is a mission. It's like planning for your own death almost. It's very challenging, and I'm sorry for saying that. Looking for funding is like mining for gold is easy. Finding to innovate for the ideas that you have, it's challenging. We need to make that easy for the young people who do not want to follow the formal route to innovate and not become consumers of everything and anything that we get. There's a lot of innovators. I've seen a lot of great work being done around different places, but only if there was funding, only if someone would come and say, I believe in your idea, yes, man, let's do it. But there's so many hurdles when it comes to enabling that. And I don't want to discourage any of the young people. Keep pushing, keep looking for funding. I think the sad part is that you now have to look outside of the country to get funding for your projects.
And you're right, there are some incredible things being done by our youth. I mean, lately there's been amazing stories about two guys with one laptop who've developed this amazing product that were found by accident and have all of a sudden become an overnight sensation. Those shouldn't be the out of the ordinary stories. There should be more of those stories.
And we are going to showcase those stories. So we creating what we call a Indaba marketplace. This is where we want to showcase every single innovative ideas, every single SME who wants to really shine and gain access to the market. Because a lot of the SMEs and entrepreneurs, they just need access to that market so they can make money. They don't always need money. They just give me an opportunity so I can showcase and deliver the greatness that I can. And then with that money, then they can grow and scale. So we're creating a place. We will communicate soon. It's called Indaba Marketplace, where all sorts of innovators will be showcased. And apologies. Yeah, we will be able to showcase and really make sure that they gain publicity for free. We're not charging anyone to showcase their work. We want people to gain access to the market. That's the end in mind.
That's incredible. Thank you, Connie, so much for your insight, your time, your opinions, your contribution to making this a better world. So we appreciate you for that.
Thank you so much, Gita, for the interview. I really appreciate you.
Right, next up. Good morning, Batisana Pule. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I am good, thanks. And you?
Great stuff. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Let me give you a quick intro and then we can take it from there. This is the wonderful Batisana Pule from Inspired Recruitment Solutions, as she currently holds the position as candidate manager there. But Stan and I have done some work in the past, specifically with some of our youth. So I know that we are in very good hands this morning. So welcome and thank you so much. Do you want to give us a quick background on yourself, please, if you wouldn't mind?
Of course. So I've been in recruitment for a couple of years now. I think I started when I was 19. Yeah, I know, right? So it's been a couple of years, it's been a while, and I've been doing it since. And I've been at Inspired. It's gonna go on 3 years now. So it's been a journey. It's been a long ride. And I think the nicest thing about my journey is that I have worked for a lot of SMMEs. So a lot of the companies that I've worked for in recruitment have been startups. So it's been able to see the front and the back end of what it looks like when you're starting out in recruitment, and what it could look like if you continue, because the journey is very long. And I'm working at Inspired. I'm a candidate manager there. I'm currently doing, so we don't like to say this, but it's like it's a 360 recruitment, but with the split function where the 180 is doing the calls and the other 180 is doing the candidate management side, which is what I do. I work quite closely with our CEO, Mr. Landry Mutombo. And in that role, essentially what I do is I'm acting as a key accounts manager. So if we've got clients, for instance, now we've just tapped into the betting industry. We know that it's a pretty large industry. So we're placing a couple of roles within the betting industry. We're doing quite a lot of things within HR. Renewables energy is also a big thing lately. So that's quite a bit of what we do. And you can never also leave the soft skills, the people at the bottom, the people that you meet at the door in the companies. It doesn't stop there. So we place them as well. I've recently actually got quite a couple of receptionist positions. So it's almost as if, you're placing all the way at the top and all the way at the bottom, which is really nice. I think it also just reminds you that a company is not just filled with CEOs and MDs and HR people. There's other back-end people as well. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So Inspired Recruitment Services actually does work across some countries in our continent, right?
Yes, it
so
does.
From your perspective, how different is South Africa's labor market in comparison to some of the countries you deal with now?
We've got our CEO is a Congolese national. So we've got a great affinity in our company to the DRC. So whenever he goes there, we're all interested to know, what is it actually like? We're getting, I want to call it an internet connection experience, but we haven't physically been there. But the big difference is, and I was thinking about this morning, just thinking about the question where, somebody would say, oh, we're so blessed in South Africa. And the things that you think that you're blessed about is actually just a functioning government. And that's the difference, right? So we feel like we're blessed and we're disgruntled, we're unhappy, but we've got some function. And the difference between them and us is literally that, right? It's like a thin line where if we experience a little bit more dysfunction, we might just turn out like that. And I think it's very jarring, it's very scary, where the differences between somebody having a job and somebody living it below the poverty line is literally that. It's the functioning government. So people are like, oh, what's it like? I'm like, there's really no difference. It's really just that we've got the infrastructure, we've got the tools, we've got some function. And if they had a little bit of what we had, we would see a big difference in what we're trying to do. So the market is there. We're trying to say, let us try to connect with these people and see how we can assist them to bridge the gap with our resources from where they are. So it's being able to help candidates join interviews using their WhatsApp video calls, for instance, and seeing what we could do to sort of connect them, because the work needs to be done. And, our philosophy internally at Inspired is to say, if it's not us, who else is going to do it? So yeah, it's a big difference. It's very jarring.
I can imagine it actually is. Yeah. But from a ground level candidate perspective, do you see a fundamental difference between how our candidates, because you as the candidate manager, you probably been much closer to it. Are our candidates fundamentally looking at the application process, their upskilling, their ability to be employable? Are we that different from other countries that you perhaps deal with or engage candidates in?
No, not at all. Not at all. I actually think that candidates are the same everywhere in the world. That's what you realize, right? People want to work. And I think that's the difference with what's happening in the market and what people are actually doing. And there's the bit of the disconnect that the market is not so great, but the people are there. The people want to work. The people are upskilling. The people are doing all these courses. The people are on Udemy doing all these things that they can do to say, look at me, I'm available, please hire me. But the market is different. So the people themselves, I think, were the same through and through. If you're looking for a qualified quantity surveyor in the DRC, they're there. They're available. If you're looking for a fitter, a turner, they're there. You're looking for an accountant, they're available. You're looking for a salesperson who does real estate development, they're actually there. It's we need to somehow find a way to just create the opportunity because the people are there.
And and I think that's where a lot of international markets tap in, right? We have nurses, we have drivers, we have teachers, we have artisans, and we've got great skilled people. But you're right, it's how do we connect them with a marketplace that can sustain the talent that we find.
100%, 100%.
Yeah. So you having your diverse experience, right? You obviously see that there's a lot of different hiring trends and practices that happen. And there's a lot of required of business to keep flexible working models. How do you see that from your perspective?
So what I'm seeing right now, specifically with Joburg, I think people in Johannesburg are pretty flexy, actually. I think that we're the most flexy city ever. People are willing to work anywhere and do anything. But you'd find that in areas like Cape Town, for instance, where Johannesburg is progressively getting out of the work from home model, Cape Town is like, no, we want to work from home. We don't want to do that. No. You want to hire me? I'm an accountant. Imagine an accountant. And they're like, no, I want hybrid. I want a hybrid model. And you're like, guys, it's been how many years after the pandemic? I understand that COVID is still there, but people need to actually get out of the house and actually get into offices, right? And I think with Joburg, it's happening more aggressively, but you really do find that people are now saying, when you phone them and you're trying to screen them and you're like, hey, I've got a role, and they're like, is it hybrid? And it immediately cuts the conversation, because if it's not hybrid, they don't want to talk to you. So it's really, it's been such a change, such a big change.
So do you think given that, do you think it's the candidates that need to be more flexible, or do you think it's the businesses that need to be more flexible, or do you think where there is a top skill that there could be a little bit of play from both sides?
You know what? Because I am an employee after all, I think that employers need to be a little bit more flexible. Honestly, I think the bums on seats mentality is still there. People feel like you're working when you're sitting at your desk. But I can work from anywhere. If I've got Teams on my phone, I could be in the shops. If I'm joining a meeting and I'm saying 2 words, do I really need to be at the office to say that? To say nothing on my side? So if you think about it like that, I feel like the employees could be a little bit more flexible. But I also feel like as employees as well, we need to understand that people have paid big bucks for the buildings that we work in, right? The world is changing, and for us to be able to maintain our authenticity, at the very least, we need to be out there. We need to meet people. We need to have more interactions, because I feel like part of the decay that's happening in the world is that we're just not interacting with people enough, that we're really forgetting the fundamentals of how we are and who we are and how we function as a society. So we really need to be out there. There's a big lack, and I think the lack can be changed by just being outside and just touching some grass and saying hi to some people.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And given that candidates want what they want and corporates want what they want, and sometimes there's amazing talent in between, what are some of the things that you feel sets apart candidates? So if you were to kind of say, what does a top candidate look like in my space? What is that?
So I always say that there's 2 kinds of candidates, right? The personality hire. Love that. I think I'm a personality hire. You will hear me before you see me. And then there's the people who excel. They are just operationally just so effective, right? But they're not really talkers. So I feel like when employers then say, what makes you stand out, it's one of those two things, right? It's either going to be your personality, or it's that maybe I'm not so great at this thing, but I'm really great with people. I'm personable, I'm bubbly, I'm out there, and I could do well in this role. Not so much because I'm fantastic and I've got the skills, but my personality allows me to sort of weave through the complexities of the working world. And then you get some people who, listen, I don't talk much, but I get my stuff done. Right. And I feel like the things that make you stand out should be the things that are intrinsic to who you are, and it's either your personality, and even with your personality, it doesn't have to be that you have to be a bubbly person, but maybe your personality is that you're a pretty functional person. You see a problem, you fix it. It's those things. And I think people forget when they walk into an interview that one of two things is going to grab the person. It's your qualifications, right? That's why you're there. But when you walk into a room, nobody knows you've got a degree. Nobody knows that you speak well or that you're bubbly. Nobody knows, but they see you, and by the time you open your mouth, it's that selling yourself, right? And I think it's those two things. It's the two people in the world like that. Like I said, it's the personality, or it's the technical people who say, listen, I don't talk much, but here's what I've achieved. This is what I do. I solve problems. I'm on time. I'm functional. Those people, there's a place for those people as well in the world. So I think it's those two things where people have to lean into their strengths to figure out what makes them stand out. What's the difference between you and I? And sometimes the difference between you and I is really that, oh, you've got a master's and I've got a personality. And I think sometimes that's good enough.
No, you're 100% correct. And I absolutely agree with you. I just wonder sometimes whether, I always tell candidates, you own the story. It's your story. You choose the bits that you tell of it, right? And how you give it to us. And I sometimes wonder whether the quiet, operationally functional people who say their valuable 2 words every now and again haven't worked out really how to articulate that value. But us that love to talk, and like you say, you can hear us before you see us typically. I think I'm that person too. My children say, Mom, you're so loud. I think I could hear you at work.
Yeah.
Do we, sometimes our personality shines through so much, but do we know how to articulate our functional value equally as well? And I think there's that balance there. And recruiters, I think you and I, we hold such a special place in being able to show both of those people how to do exactly that.
100%. And I think just to expand on what you're saying, I think for the quiet person who's not really talkative, I feel like when we're doing our interview tips and stuff like that, like you said, we've got a special place because we've got the ability to help you to figure out your value, right? When we are helping you to prepare for an interview, people forget the things that they've done at work. People forget the impact that they've done. So when you're asking people about their strengths and their weaknesses and what they've achieved, and if you ask people, so what do you do every single day? And you had to then make the person, or allow the person to think, if I was gone tomorrow, which part of my function would the company be able to do or do without? And I think that's how people need to realize their value. So when people say to them, so what do you bring to the table? What makes you stand out? And you say, listen, I've been at this company for a year, but this is what I've been able to do for them in my quietness. I may not be loud about it, but this is what I've achieved. Without my function, I do not think that this gap can be filled. This is why my function is essential. This is why my skills are essential. This is what makes me stand out. So I think people need to realize, and people need to start documenting their small achievements in work, especially operationally. So what are you doing every single day that's saving your company money? It's a small thing, but it's a big thing when you're speaking to somebody who's asking you, what do you bring to the table?
Absolutely. So true. You and I both have seen sectorial shifts over the years, and in fact, even the short period of time. So from your business perspective, which sectors do you see growing? Which sectors do you see shrinking?
So definitely manufacturing shrinking completely. The factories are closing. I think it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating, especially because manufacturing really is the core of our country and what we do. So it's very, very scary to realize that with all the changes that are happening within the industrial sectors, that the manufacturing side is really suffering. The car companies are leaving, whereas they, 10 years ago, they were here because we had the land, we had the plants, we had the skills. And I think what I realized is when I started in recruitment, industrial engineers and fitters and turners were like a big thing, right? Having to work with companies like Avenge and Barloworld and all these things was exciting to me. We wanted to place for companies like that. And then you realize that, oh my God, like the BMWs the factories are leaving. And you realize that our country has spent the past couple of years training artisans, right? That's really the core of our country in terms of the skills development. So now when these factories leave, what happens to all these people that have been trained, that have been developed, and the factories are gone, but the people are not there? So it's very, very scary. So the industries that are suffering would be the manufacturing. It also would be, what I'm realizing now is that, I don't know, but I was speaking to my sister the other day, and my nephew was cutting his hair, and she was like, "Oh no, we had to come to like Kailami to cut our hair here because the hairdresser's gone. He's left for Australia." I said, "Oh, why?" He said, "No, because Australia is taking our people. To them, it's a skill that's essential. So being able to cut hair, being a hairdresser is an essential skill. So you realize that the people are really taking our people. It's really scary. So you see those sectors suffering, but the sectors that are on the rise, and it's exciting to me, but also not at the same time when you realize the implications of the industry, the gambling industry. I think it's exciting up to a certain point, and then you're like, this is a bit scary, right? So industries that are on the rise would be your gambling, big rise there. And you'll find that there's a big rise with the AIs and the software engineers and the developments. And you also find that now people are expecting finance people to have like Power BI tools. So it's like a big tech shift where you can't just be like an HR person. You need to be able to do, your HR and your analytics. And it's like everything is pairing with the analytics. Your finance is pairing with analytics. Even your normal IT people that you would think, oh, it's just a software engineer. Okay, but then you need to have analytics and you need to know how to do AI. You realize with the multimedia as well, it's not good enough for you to just be a graphic designer or a motion designer. Can you do your Google ads? Can you do your analytics? Can you build a dashboard? Can you use a report? So that's really what we're noticing now at even in our office, especially with the roles that we place, where there's a big rise in the need for people to be like analytical, your data, your dashboards. So you find that people have done finance, but it's like, no, I've got a Power BI certificate as well. I've done data analytics at UCT. So that's the rise that I am seeing.
Okay, lovely. And that leads in nicely to, there's a guest, a viewer that has a question. Jackie has asked, from your experience, we did touch on this a little bit now, but what do you think are the behaviors of top candidates?
So I'm going to use our company Inspired, our organization Inspired as a backdrop. So we've got what we call a VAT model, right? So it's your values, your activities that will always lead to your target. So we've always said that a person can reach their target, but if these two things, these key components are not right, then you don't belong in our organization. Our CEO likes to say, our bus, you don't belong on our bus. If your values are not correct, you don't belong on our bus. If your activities are not correct, you don't belong on our bus, because those two things then feed into the target, right? We're not saying that it's not good enough rather to say we want high performers. We want the values, we want the activities, and it'll constantly feed into the target. So the target is lost, but these two things are so important to us. So I always think that when we think about top performance, it's really your values, right? It's really your behaviors. Are you on time? How do you present yourself at work? How do you speak to people? How do you interact with people? Like I said, from the very bottom to the very top, how do you interact? What are you doing to empower yourself every single day? What are you feeding yourself every single day? Also, with the news that you're watching and your views, and people think these things don't matter, but your political views, they matter. They make you who you are. How does that allow you to assimilate in the environment that you're going to work in? How do you treat your coworkers? So all those things, they really bleed into each other. And these are, it's those things that a workplace cannot give you. It's those values that a workplace can't give you. It's values that you either have them or you don't. And I feel like when I am training people on the interview skills and what makes you stand out, I always think, please go read the values and the missions of the company that you're going into, because they have to align, right? It also gives you a great talking point, because who you are will always stand out. So when you're able to connect with the values and with the missions of a company, then you're able to then match that back to yourself and think, you know what, actually, I want to work for a company like this. Look at the CSI initiatives that they're a part of. I want to be a part of a company like that. So I really feel like our VAT models really speaks to what I also believe as well, who I am intrinsically, so my values, my activities, how I show up for work, the things that I say yes to, the things that I say no to, very important. So yeah, I really feel like what makes you stand out is really those key components.
That's a great model, and I think that I do something very similar. And it also takes a different skill set to be able to extract that and to gauge that from people. So, but absolutely critical. And Jackie's mentioned that what you said earlier is so true. AI is not going to replace you.
No, it's not.
People that know how to use AI are going to replace you.
I love that.
What we do there is so, so, so important.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, you and I have had some very interesting conversations about how people show up in the marketplace, and you tapped into some of those now. But what do you see is the biggest gap in people's personal brands? From all the people that you've engaged with as a candidate manager, where's the biggest gap in a personal brand?
I think the people who are doing quite well in that is, I think the people who've established themselves in the market have found a way to, it's almost like your niche, what do you do? I'm an HR person, but okay, in which industry? So I think when people are branding themselves, they need to then take it from, it's the layer, right? So yes, I'm an HR person, but what's my industry? What's my niche? So you find that people will move from FMCG to finance to engineering to poultry to, so if you really want to brand yourself, I think the shift that I'm seeing is that people are moving to anywhere where they're willing to get paid. And I think that's the biggest problem, because clients then become, okay, why is this person moving? You understand it because you've spoken to them. But when you present a person's CV to the client is like, I don't understand. Why did they stay for 2 years and move and go from KPMG and go to Land Bank? Why? So I think if people are going to think of personal branding in terms of their CVs and how they present themselves in that way, I would say pick an industry, become an expert in that industry, then that becomes your superpower. When we're presenting your CV, we can say, listen, she's worked at Pepsi, she's worked at Coca-Cola, she's worked at, look at all these places where she's worked, look at what she's achieved within that space. And from there, you're branding yourself as this person in this market. You're creating a niche for yourself. But if you're going to go from banking to finance or whatever, people are not really going to. Also, you realize that the hiring managers are very old school in their thinking, in their mentality, right? Like I said, we understand, we get it, because I would also move. But they have been sitting in that role for 10 years thinking, okay, what's happening? They've got a very narrow view of the world and what's happening. So it's very hard for them to understand why people stay for 2 years and leave. So it's that consistency as well, also very important on a CV. So I feel like in terms of personal branding, it's really that, right? It's being able to stick in an industry, have some longevity, also the consistency would be the places that you're working as well. So yeah, I would say, just to answer your question with a well-rounded answer, it would be that how you present your CV, how long you've stayed, the industries you're picking, does it make sense? Do they correlate? Are you creating are you creating an opportunity for yourself to be an expert in that industry?
You touched on something earlier that I thought was very valuable. You said it's not okay to be a finance manager or an HR manager on its own now. You also have to be a Power BI expert and understand analytics. And I just wonder whether you feel that often translates to a brand. Yes, you've got Power BI, but are you able to show me what decisions you've made, what change you have made, what successes you've had by the virtue of being able to use the data that you've
Yeah.
got. And I think sometimes that gets missed in a brand, the
Mm.
articulation of value. Would you agree with that?
I do actually. I think that's such a good point that you've just raised, right? Like, how do you articulate your value? What do you say? How do you explain what you do? That it's fine, you do finance, right? At face value, it's finance. But when you delve deeper into it, you're like, no, I don't just do finance. So I really feel like what you said is so important. And I hope that the listeners really got that to say, hey, Gita dropped some gems there. I love that.
Cool. Let's finish off. You have carte blanche. What is the one thing in our market that you would change that you believe would have a positive impact on the state of employability in South Africa?
Oh, this is a tough one. And I think we have a quarterly strat at work every quarterly strat every quarter. But we have strat, and I think every strat we try to we like to look back, and we also like to look forward, and we try to really find the lessons in how well we've done or how badly we've done with our numbers. And the last strat that we had, I remember it coincided with our 10-year anniversary at work. And my mother was like, what are you so busy with? I'm like, it's strat. I need to do a presentation. It's our 10th year anniversary. We need to set up. I always joke in the office and I say that I'm a temp worker for the marketing team. So I'm like, no, I'm temping at marketing. So I've just got all these things to do. And I think she asked me a question that stuck with me when I was doing my presentation or when I was putting it together. And she said to me, why do you care? Why do you care? And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Why do I care? What are you asking me? So I sat and I thought about it. And my answer to her was that, well, it's the values that you taught me. If I care about something, I take care of it. I immerse myself in it. I give myself to it. I take my time about it. I'm prideful about it. So I really think if I could change anything in anybody, especially the people who are trying to get back or to try to get into the working place, you're a graduate, you're new, I would say your pride is going to take you such a long way. If you just care slightly more than other people care, that's the thing that's going to make you stand out. If you just, and I think that's just the world in general, right? If you just care a little bit more about some things than other people, that's the difference. So you realize that these things, it's the little things. The other day, you taking your children to school and you realize that, oh, there's a piece of paper. Automatically you want to pick that paper up and you want to throw it away, right? So it's those things for me. It's like littering. It's like saying please and thank you. It's like opening doors for people. It's the chivalry. And I think for me, it's part of the pride. It all goes together. So if I could change one thing, I would make people have a little bit more pride in themselves, in the values that they have, in how they represent themselves, because how you represent yourself is going to be how you represent your company. It's like when we had the talk at TUT with the students, and I said, the only reason why I wanted you guys to switch on your cameras, I wanted you guys to get into the habit of sitting upright. Just sit upright. Just have a strong back. Have a strong back. And having a strong back isn't just the physical, right? It's having a strong back in society. It's being able to stand up for what's right. it's doing the good that nobody can see. So if I could had a wand in the world, I really feel like the little gaps that we're experiencing, the depravity that we're experiencing, is really just that. Have some pride, have a backbone, stand up for something, and it's going to make such a difference. I promise you, those values, you may never even need to say them, people will see them.
Masatana, it is always a pleasure having you. I enjoy every interaction I ever have with you, and I thank you so much for your practical value input you've given. Thanks for your time. Take care.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is not just another talk show. It's the pulse check of a working continent. The job market, where policy meets people and numbers meet names. From factories to futures, from data to dignity. We don't just count jobs, we build them. The job market, only on Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover. You're listening to Career Indaba Radio, the voice of Africa's labor market. Real voices, real change, real opportunity. If unemployment is a crisis, now what? We are moving from talk to action. Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover. A 5-day live broadcast activation from 27 to 31 October 2025, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily. Hosted by Career Indaba board members leading Africa's biggest conversations on employment, skills, youth empowerment, and inclusive growth. Bring a pledge, a placement, or a partnership. Catch us live on careerindaba.org and all our social media platforms. Career Indaba, the voice of Africa's labor market.
Good morning, Brani. How are you?
Morning, Gita. I am well, thank you, and very happy to be here.
Oh, lovely. Brani, would you like to maybe introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background, please?
Yes, sure. So I work as an executive and career coach, and I've been doing this work for the last 10 years. And the type of people that I work with are generally professionals who are either transitioning into their next step, or they're struggling to transition into their next step. Or they've already transitioned and they're finding that they're then struggling to succeed there because what got them there isn't what will make them successful there. So I work with a lot of people who are in that transition and grappling with how to succeed at that point in their career.
And that is a big space because we've chatted about this and we've agreed that it's not only youth employment that is a crisis, and that there is a whole range of different issues in that mid to senior market. And yes, we know that there's a bunch of external factors, the market, what Trump does, et cetera. But there are also elements that we don't always see or we don't always take into account. And as a coach that focuses in this space, tell us what you see as the state of employability in that mid to senior labor market space.
I think often what I see is this disconnect between the opportunities that are out there and how really competent professionals are positioning themselves, or rather not positioning themselves for those opportunities. From everything from not understanding how to write a CV correctly, how to show up on LinkedIn, how to make sure that they're visible, how to make sure that people know what they should know about them. And I was listening to your guest earlier talking about how people need to be more clear on their brand. And I think it's such a great point because I think a lot of mid to senior level professionals get lost in the system because they're not clear on how to articulate the impact that they make, the contributions that they've made. And so a lot of the coaching that I do with that segment of my clients is actually helping them to figure out how to say, this is what I've achieved, and this is how I can contribute, and this is why I'm the right person for this opportunity. And instead they get stuck in this headspace of having to talk about kind of this menu of responsibilities that they've had, rather than a collection of impacts that they've made. And I hear so often from people saying, but I can't say that, it's not humble. My work should speak for itself. I shouldn't have to be saying things. People should just know that this is what I'm doing. And so this massive disconnect happens where absolutely brilliant people aren't getting snapped up for these opportunities because they get stuck in this, it's a derailing kind of mindset of, I shouldn't have to speak for myself. It should just be obvious that I'm this good.
And in your head, it is obvious, but to somebody who doesn't know you in the marketplace, not obvious at all.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can completely resonate with what they're saying, because it's hard for all of us when we're so close to what we do to realize that what's normal for us isn't necessarily normal for others. And we get so caught up in this kind of habituated way of being that we don't even know that what we're doing is really good. And then we just assume, well, if I talk about this, nobody's going to see that it's really good because it's just normal. This is just normal. It's not, I'm not shooting the lights out at all.
Absolutely. Do you think in this space there's a bigger element of internal struggles, if that's the right word for me to word it, that we've spent, some of us in the senior to mid, we may have spent a fair amount of time in one workplace, and there's an element of fear to move. One, maybe because we worry about job security given the external factors, and two, I think that exact thing comes into play in a negative way, that maybe it's we are able to be exceptional here and our work speaks for itself here, but can I do that somewhere else?
Absolutely. It's you're 100% spot on. We get it's that learning model of unconscious incompetence all the way through to conscious incompetence and then conscious competence. And the further we go through that model, we start off not knowing what we don't know. So we think, I can do just about anything. And then we get into that position, we go, oh my goodness, I have made such a big mistake. Now I'm starting to realize that I can't do just about anything. In fact, I don't know that I can do anything at all. Then we learn a little bit more and we start getting more competent. And then we start to realize, now I know what I don't know. And suddenly we start to think, well, there's so much that I don't know that it's just better that I stay safe here. And I do what I know how to do rather than getting out of my comfort zone. And somebody will somehow see that there's so much that I don't know, so I better not apply. And I think that's where this kind of whole imposter syndrome starts to kick in. And I've said to people so often, when your imposter syndrome starts to kick in, that's actually a really exciting point to be at. Because for me, that's that kind of internal voice saying you're at the edge of your comfort zone. You've been in this comfort zone, you know what you're doing. And outside of your comfort zone is where you're going to grow and learn. And so when that voice kind of pops up and it says, don't go out there, you're not good enough for that next job. That's actually where you want to listen to it and go, this is what I've achieved already. And yeah, I may not be ready yet, but either there's a few things that I need to do, and in which case, let me chat to someone to help me kind of accelerate that learning journey. Or actually, I am ready to step out there and I know it's going to be a learning journey. I know I'm going to have to get really conscious. I know I'm going to have to apply myself intentionally, but I'm ready for that next step and for the learning that comes with it.
And honestly, that move would be so valuable from so many perspectives. the company that you're leaving for will have to step up and develop new skills to take over. The company that you are moving to, you will fundamentally be able to grow them and impart and share knowledge that will grow a different business. So
Absolutely.
it's that we need to have both, but here I'm stuck. So it's such a valuable conversation to be having with people.
Exactly. And it's whether you're being promoted within your organization or you're moving into a new organization or into a new industry. It's that point at which you get conscious. And I think a huge risk, and I think what we lose in our job market at the moment, and maybe always, is we get unconscious and we stop knowing what it is that we know, and we stop imparting that knowledge to others. And I think the best space to ever be able to kind of mentor somebody, to grow others, to be a great team leader, is at that point where you're able to impart your knowledge kind of articulately so that others can learn and grow as well. And so I do think being at that edge of your comfort zone and stepping into that kind of space where you have to learn again is good for you and it's good for others, because it's a great reminding point of I'm a learner again, which means others are learners again, which means I have a role to enable their learning.
Absolutely. In the past, technical competency was enough. We could shine and we could showcase, the work would speak for itself because it was technical. It was absolute measurables. But that's no longer the case. So what do you think are the skills that are now necessary to showcase both sides?
Yeah, look, I think your technical skills get you a certain point in your career. You have to know what you're doing, but there's a point in your career where, and it's pretty early on, where you have to be able to build relationships with people. You have to understand the politics of an organization so that you know how to navigate relationships and who to be building relationships with. You have to have some strategic skills in being able to understand that what you do impacts others and what others do impacts you, and how those things interface. You have to have a lot of emotional intelligence as well. It's, as a leader or as anybody who wants to lead in any position, you've got to be able to lead yourself before you can lead others well. And so emotional intelligence is important. And then you spoke with your guest earlier about brand. And having a brand is important too, being very clear on how you want people to experience you, how you position yourself, who you make yourself known to, what they know you for. All of these things are important. So your technical intelligence is one thing, but these other 5 things that I've talked about, so strategic intelligence, your political intelligence, your emotional intelligence, your social intelligence, your brand intelligence, those are the things that will make you successful as you continue further and further in your career.
You talk about these 5 things, and you've also focused a lot in the last little while about how these become our derailers, what it is about ourselves that almost take us off our path to greatness, and how they show up in our behavior and in our mindset that don't help ourselves. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I've got low strategic intelligence, I'm probably going to be somebody who works in isolation and who kind of goes with the wind. I don't have a very clear sense of where I'm wanting to go. I stay isolated in my silo. I do probably really good work in my silo, but I don't have a sense of how I impact others and how they impact me. And I take whatever opportunities occur, but I don't really go out and strategically look for making the right connections, putting myself in the right place to build kind of a plan towards where I want to get to, because I don't know where I want to get to. And often those are people who tend to be really good technically at what they're doing, and they can't understand, why am I not getting bigger opportunities? And those bigger opportunities require you often to have a much more strategic understanding of an organization, so that you understand how your work connects into others and vice versa. The second derailer is when you don't know how to navigate politics in an organization. So you'll hear people say quite frequently, I don't want to play politics, that's dirty. I just want to do my work and I don't want to have to deal with this other kind of mucky kind of stuff that people play. But the reality is politics in organizations is relationships. It's understanding what are the formal and the informal ways that decisions get made? Who do you need to be connected with to influence and impact decision making? And most importantly, why does the organization have you in the position that they've got you in the first place? What return do they get on their investment in having you in that position? Because if you don't understand that, you're not going to be able to succeed in your existing position. And you're certainly not going to be able to ask the question around what would make me relevant to move into my next position? Mm-hmm. How do I make sure that you get the best return on investment out of me? And so when we don't play politics, or if we don't understand politics, we derail ourselves by staying stuck in a particular position because we haven't built those networks and we haven't built our relevance. The third one is emotional intelligence. When we have low emotional intelligence, we're generally quite emotionally reactive. And in a very changeable world and in this huge uncertainty that we live in the world of work, there's constantly things that are happening that can trigger us. If we don't know how to manage our emotions and choose how we respond and be quite measured in the way that we respond, and that's not to say don't have emotions. It's about noticing your emotions and noticing whether they're driving your behaviors. If we're low on that and we're reactive, it's like having an emotional bomb in the room the whole time. And people don't know how to predict what you're going to be like. And if you're that person, over the course of your career, you'll find that people start to sideline you because it's exhausting. One day you're happy, the next day you're angry. And people need predictability when they're going to work with people. We all look for safety. The fourth one is your social intelligence. And this kind of overlaps into some of the intelligences I've already talked about. There, it's about being able to work well with others, to bring the best out of others, to be able to put the best into others, to be able to delegate, to trust, to communicate, to step into the language of other people so that they understand what it is that you want them to do. And if we stay very stuck in our way of doing things and we don't try and navigate and build bridges into other people's ways of doing things, we end up being very siloed. And we can't deliver greater impact through others. So that can be a derailer as well. And then the final one is the brand intelligence. And we often hear people say, well, we used to hear, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I think it's actually who knows you. And that's your brand intelligence. That's making sure, do the right people know that I exist? Do they know what I stand for and why I exist? And how I can be relevant to them and in what way, okay? And so when we're able to cultivate an awareness around us of who we are, what we do, and what problems we can solve, or how we make people's lives easier, that's when we've leveraged our brand intelligence. And that's when we can make sure that when the right opportunity comes up, we're top of mind for that. And I think that's the disconnect a lot in our market is there are some amazing opportunities out there, but the right people aren't top of mind for those things because they're unconsciously derailing themselves in many of these different ways that I've talked about.
I love that brand intelligence one. It is, you can know a lot of people, but if they don't know the right things about you, there's zero value to that. I absolutely love that one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a personal realization for me, and this is why I talk about it a lot with my clients, is I know a lot of people, but sometimes I'm not great at making sure that the right people know me for the right things. And it's what we talked about at the beginning. We fall into this trap of thinking, well, I do what I do every day. It's not that kind of special because if I can do it, surely everybody else does it. And I know I'm doing it. Surely everybody else knows I'm doing it too. Mm-hmm. And so we fall into these unconscious traps. And I think that's why coaching is important, because coaching gets you out of that unconscious kind of comfort zone. And it forces you to get uncomfortable and to start to notice things that have become very habituated for you. So, and really what I love about working with my clients is when I'm getting them conscious about things that they've stopped being aware of, it makes me conscious too.
And you know, it's that you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes we don't know ourselves as well as we think we do. We have blind spots to where we are derailing ourselves. And it was, I know that you've developed a scorecard. I did the scorecard assessment myself. And, you know, in hindsight, I was like, oh my goodness. And then I said, I know this. Now that I've been made aware of it, I can see how it's played out. I'm now a little bit more conscious of what it is.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about that scorecard and how you see that helping with the absolute, and I believe in coaching massively to help professionals shift. But tell me what you believe that scorecard's going to do for people.
Okay, so the scorecard that I've developed is really looking at the 5 areas that we derail ourselves and the 5 intelligences that act as the antidote to those derailers. And it's a 25 question scorecard that people can respond to. I don't charge anybody to respond to it, but really what it does is in a 2 or 3 minutes that it takes you to answer these questions, it gives you the results that highlight where you might have a blind spot. And so it'll give you an overall result of you may be drifting, and these are the 5 areas where you're either doing well or you're not doing well, or you really need to start to take notice. And really what it's doing is it's making you conscious, because we can't manage anything until we can name it. So the moment you can name, oh, I'm really low on my political intelligence, that's when you can say to yourself, okay, this is an area that I need to start working on. If I work on this area, I can build better relationships, I can influence better, and I'll be working in a way that's politically intelligent in my organization. If you don't know that, or you don't want to know that, you're keeping yourself stuck. And so from a coaching perspective, coaching is really about getting you unstuck, and it's about essentially making you uncomfortable, and uncomfortable enough that you want to make the shift to start changing things. And so the derailer scorecard will give you clues as to where you might need to start doing some work. And in some areas, it may be a couple weeks of work that you need to do to just get more aware and more strategic in how you do things. In other areas, there might be a lot more work to do.
And, you know, after taking it myself, I can honestly, personally attest to the value that it gives you in terms of seeing your own blind spots. And I'm also a huge believer in we need to fix where there's gaps, but understanding where our strengths are gives us a unique ability to capitalize on that. Because when we do what we do well better, we can then also work on what we need to improve at the same time, and it feels more balanced and it feels better, actually, just better.
Absolutely, and I'm really glad that you said that, because each of those 5 intelligences overlap with each other. So none of them stands in isolation. And so if you are strong in one particular intelligence, use that as leverage to build the other intelligences, and vice versa. And I do think that we so often get caught up in focusing on, this is what I'm so bad at, as opposed to, this is what I'm good at, and this is what how I can use that as a foundation to keep building. And we are multiple things. We are never one or the other thing. We are many, many layers, and each of those layers contribute to kind of the richness of who we are. And I do think that's something that a lot of us lose sight of when we're trying to look for a job, or we're trying to position ourselves for our next step, is that we get stuck in this label of, this is what I am. I'm a geologist, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a this. And we stop looking at, what are the kind of the portable skills that I have? What is the collection of skills and competencies and impacts that I've made that make me something bigger than perhaps this label that I'm stuck in. And if we bring this back to the job market, I do think this is an area where we often lose sight. We kind of look at a particular position and we go, well, it's got that label and I'm not a that. But if you start to break it down and you start to look at, well, what are the requirements for this position? What are the responsibilities going to be? What is this position calling for in terms of the impact and contribution you're going to need to make? And you then strip away the label and you start to look at, well, have I been doing that in a variety of different ways in the course of my career? Often what you can find is that there are many ways in which somebody is appropriate for a position, but they get blindsided by the fact that I am this label. And if I stay stuck in that label, I don't know how to communicate my value in this particular opportunity.
Absolutely. And, I am always, and I will remain a firm believer in coaching. The value of it is astronomical. So in our last couple of minutes, we've got 4 minutes left. Can you give me a real life example of transformation you've experienced? Maybe you've been coaching somebody that they've seen through your coaching, and then how listeners can access your derailing scorecard for themselves and take that first step of awareness.
Perfect. So there's someone that I worked with kind of probably earlier last year that I think is a prime example. He was being positioned for a promotion into a global head of role, and he was terrified. He knew he had the technical competencies to do this, but he kept saying to me, I'm not sure I want to take this position because I'm not sure I know how to navigate the organizational politics. I'm not sure I know how I'm going to be able to manage a team of this kind of magnitude. And I think I might hold back from actually accepting this kind of opportunity. And we had probably 6 sessions together. And in the course of those 6 sessions, we dug into a lot of his kind of internal narrative around why he might not be good enough. And in the process, figured out that actually that internal narrative was trying to keep him stuck in his comfort zone. He knew how to do his job. He was scared of getting out of his comfort zone and stretching himself. We dug into the politics issues that he was afraid of. And we started mapping out the stakeholders he needed to build relationships with, some of his insecurities and his assumptions around politics. And we worked out how to overcome those. And 6 months later, he was promoted into the global head position. And now he's been in the role for just over a year and is thriving. And we touch base once in a while. There's still a few things where he's got anxieties around certain things, but those are completely normal anxieties. And with some maintenance coaching, we're working on those issues. But it's been such a highlight for me because had he held himself back from that opportunity, it would have been such a missed opportunity both for him and for the organization, purely because of these internal stories that we hold unconsciously within ourselves. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that stops mid-level and senior people from making the moves that they could be making, because the more they know, the more they think they don't know.
How do we access the scorecard?
So all you need to do is go to my website, which is www.brianelieber.com, and it'll pop up on the first page, or you can scroll through the menu to scorecards.
Bryony, thank you so much for helping me see my own blind spots through that one, and for your time and your wisdom. We genuinely appreciate you, and I look forward to becoming more aware of what I can do to move on. So thank you for that. I hope a lot of people access that, because it's genuinely incredibly helpful and so spot on and very simple to do. So congratulations on developing this, and thank you for your time.
Gita, thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
This is not just another talk show. It's the pulse check of a working continent. The job market, where policy meets people and numbers meet names. From factories to futures, from data to dignity. We don't just count jobs, we build them. The job market. Only on Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover. Career Indaba. Real voices, real change, real opportunity. The conversation becomes a movement. The idea becomes an economy. This is not another event. It's an activation of Africa's potential. The Career Indaba Expo and Bootcamp 2026, where 5,000 delegates, 100 exhibitors, and 20 bootcamp zones collide to create the future of work. From youth innovators to corporate pioneers, from township traders to global brands, every voice counts. 2 days, one goal. Aligning Africa's skills with its opportunities. Career Indaba Expo and Bootcamp 2026. 15th to 16th May, Sandton Convention Center, where skills meet, where Africa works.
Morning, Shavira. How are you?
Good morning, Gita. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on Impact Week. We're looking forward to some of your advice. Would you maybe like to take a minute to introduce yourself and the business you're from and what it is that you do?
Sure, no problem. I work for a company called Catalyx, and Catalyx focus is social impact. Every program that we run has a social impact view of how can we affect communities positively, and this is through youth empowerment and youth employment and enterprise development.
Awesome. And your role there is a head director of recruitment, correct?
So for Catalyx Personnel, I am the director, and for Catalyx Consulting, I'm the senior project manager.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for that. Now, we know that you focus in the youth space, and it was really interesting to see commentary from the minister the other day where they advertised 5,000, I think the number was, SAPS positions, and that there were 1 million applicants for those positions. And they found it interesting that the majority of those applicants were degreed youth. So what do you think this says about the state of employability?
So, the response of over 1 million applicants for the 5,500 trainee positions is actually the reality with most entry-level positions, where employers are receiving a large number of applicants. For example, with our programs on an annual basis, we would receive about 70,000 applications just for 600 entry-level positions. Most of these applications are coming from Gauteng and KZN, and interestingly, mostly are female. If we look at our university graduate unemployment rate in South Africa, it's sitting at about 11.7%. And if we have to consider all the other tertiary qualifications, diplomas, etc., unemployment rate is at around 23%, which is just over 1 million graduates unemployed. So the flood of applications actually highlights the intense competition for jobs in South Africa, especially amongst our unemployed graduates. And the sad reality for us is that South Africa is losing a lot of its skilled workers to countries like Canada, Australia, USA, Ireland. And often because these countries are offering better salaries, advanced infrastructure, and overall a better quality of life. And as much as there's no single definitive percentage, surveys indicate that between 50 to 90% of our South African university graduates have considered emigrating and working abroad. So I'm assuming, given the opportunity, they would definitely take that on. For young people, I think a huge factor would be they need to get career advice about what the career gaps are in the market. And when they choose their study, as much as it appeals to you, they need to also select something that fills that gap in the market. Thanks, Gita.
Yeah, absolutely true. You know, I said on my own desk, a little while ago, I think 2, 3 weeks ago, I advertised on LinkedIn only, no job boards, just on LinkedIn,
Uh-huh.
a finance grad position, one role at one company. I think in the first day, I think I got just over 3,000 applicants. And that's a huge number. And if you given that let's take that over a week that I potentially left that ad up there, we're talking about those millions of people per role. It's a very scary reality, but it also puts us as recruiters in a difficult position. It to screen thousands and thousands of candidates for one or two or even 100 roles is really hard, because on the one hand we want to help everybody, on the other hand there's only so many roles to go around. So
Absolutely.
on your own desk, in your own business, what are you looking for when you're screening these thousands of candidates to ultimately get to your shortlist before you even interview? What do you look for?
So I would look at the minimum criteria for the position. So on the job advert, it would stipulate location, age, have you completed matric, or if needed, what's the relevant qualification and the type of experience. So I would start screening based on the minimum criteria. So my advice to unemployed is read the job advert carefully. If you don't meet the criteria, chances are your CV is not going to be considered. So if you don't meet that criteria, look for something else. The other aspect that we at Catalyx do is we conduct work readiness training before the actual interview process for unemployed youth. This helps us to prepare the youth for the interview and a bit of the world of work as well. And during the interview, we would look for attitude and humility. Most often, it is the individual with the right attitude who gets hired, someone who's willing to learn and grow. My advice is be confident, but don't come across as sassy. Nobody wants to hire a sassy youth. A manager, maybe, because you can be challenged, but not someone who's coming in with no work experience at all. I would look for energy, not someone who drags their feet. And the reasons for this is because we can train you on the aspects of the job, but we cannot train you to be self-motivated, driven, or energetic. Those are things that come from within you. And our final screening would be for criminal records. So regardless of how good you are, if you have a criminal record, unfortunately, our programs will not allow us to employ you. So that's what we look for, Gita.
So, you know, we get thousands of CVs, and for the most part, most tertiary student CVs look very, very similar. It's their personal details, maybe where they live, their qualifications, sometimes their majors, sometimes their transcripts. There has to be something that they give us that gets us to look at that particular CV differently. So when you get the CV, other than the minimum requirements, what do you hope to see in that document that will get you to move them on to the next process?
So definitely a professional looking CV. We have, if you don't have access to digital, there is internet cafes that you can go to. There are programs online that you could use as well, where you can create a professional CV. So please use these facilities available. If you plan to add your photo to your profile, please ensure it is a professional photo and not a selfie. It projects you the best image of you. Ensure that your social media presence projects a professional image of you. So it's all about your brand and how you present yourself. On the CV, if you've had no experience, you're currently unemployed, I would encourage you to volunteer. There are lots of not-for-profit organizations in communities, there's schools, there's clinics. Go and volunteer, because volunteer experience is still experience, and it helps you to gain workplace skills. It also shows a prospective employer that you're not somebody who is idle. You are somebody who is willing to take a chance. You want to gain knowledge and experience. So it doesn't matter if you've never worked before. Go and volunteer to gain some experience. Thanks, Gita.
I love that volunteering. I also actively encourage volunteering. And you know that we also have to be conscious that as youth or anybody in the job market, when you're unemployed, the stress and anxiety is already one thing. And looking for a job can be a job in itself. And it is both mentally and emotionally draining. Very often, volunteering for a cause that is meaningful to you not only gives you work experience, but it also fills your soul. You almost feel like you have a purpose. You almost feel like there's value that you contribute. So not just from a what do I put on my CV point of view, but from the ability to feel wanted and meaningful can also be very valuable when you volunteer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How often, Shavira, do you go and look at somebody's online brand? So you've seen the CV, you kind of got a sense of what it is. You're wanting to move forward with them. Do you often go and look at their LinkedIn? And if you do, what are you hoping to see there?
When I go into your social media, I'm looking to see, first of all, the photo. So what do you look like? Often you'd be curious to wonder, what does this person look like? And then I would look at your posts to see whether you are somebody who is looking at the world of work from a professional perspective, or are you someone who's on social media just for the purpose of gaining attention? So what is the purpose of you having a social media brand? And that tells me the type of individual that I could potentially be employing in my business.
I also do that. I like to look at the post because it gives me your story. You've
Yes.
got such a great opportunity as anybody in the market, not specifically youth, but especially youth, to use posts to strategically tell me your story, to show me your understanding of your world, your application of the knowledge that you've learned, the way that you use perhaps even projects during varsity that may be relevant to the real world of work. To me, that genuinely sets you apart. And when I see those, I'm automatically more interested than when I see a brand or a profile, let's call it a profile, that has the absolute bare minimums on it, because we all have something to talk about. And I think it's imperative that we start to tell our stories better. Do you think that?
Absolutely. I think that it's so important. Again, it's about your brand. And your brand is the only thing you have that people would look at and determine your character, determine whether you are somebody worthwhile investing in.
You're quite right. It's so important. And in a sea, and when I say a sea, it's more like an ocean of candidates. You really want to use every single opportunity that you've got.
And
Literally
you want to
everyone you've
stand
got.
out.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, so you do a lot of work in preparing candidates for interview. Your business goes really the extra mile in giving them those extra steps to showcase their actual value. So, if we're specifically talking to interviewing skills, what do you think are the top tips or the top areas that people need to be focusing on to nail an interview?
So that's so important, Gita. I would say the most important thing to do when you are invited to an interview is to prepare for that interview. Regardless of how many interviews you've attended previously, every interview is different and you have to prepare. So, preparation requires you to do research on the company and the role that you are being interviewed for. Know exactly the location of where this interview is taking place and plan your transport route, especially if you are taking public transport, because you want to arrive 15 to 20 minutes ahead of time to an interview. You want to have a chance to just relax a bit before you are called into that interview. So plan yourself. Most importantly, plan your outfit. In an interview, it's professional corporate wear. Avoid using jeans and t-shirts. Make sure that your hair is neat, your nails are neat. And for me, for men, I would say please use full socks, not secret socks. Cover those ankles. It may be fashionable, but it's not professional corporate wear. The next thing you should prepare is how you will actually answer some of the common questions. Now, it's very easy to find some of these questions online. Do some research and then prepare your answers to some of those common questions. Stand in front of a mirror. Watch yourself as you answer those questions, or ask someone to role play an interview scene with you. The reason why I'm saying this is because interview preparation helps your brain by reducing anxiety as you rehearse potential responses. It helps you to build confidence, and it allows you for more focused thinking during the actual interview. And it also helps you to recall information and examples more easily instead of your mind going blank during the interview. When a question is posed to you and you don't understand it, please ask for clarity. It is better to ask for clarity than to give the interviewer an incorrect answer. And remember, when an employer asks you the question, tell me about yourself, they want to know more about who you are, your family, your education, your career so far, and a bit about your future plans. So, for example, when explaining your skills, don't say, I'm a hard worker, a problem solver, a good communicator, and I enjoy socializing. Those are good words to use, but they mean nothing if you do not have actual examples from work experience to back up those skills. So if you say, I am a problem solver, use an example of when you had to solve a problem, whether it was in your studies or whether you have some experience and it happened in the workplace. If you don't have any experience to back up the skill, rather not say you have the skill, because if you've had no work experience, how do you back up saying that I can multitask? And then my final thing would be get a good night's rest. Get up early, have breakfast, go over your interview preparation questions and CV before leaving for the interview. And if you are invited to a virtual interview, the above applies the same. Please dress well, even if it is virtual, because you will be asked to put your camera on. You will need to be able to prepare to answer the questions. It's the same interviewers. The only difference is that it's done online. But prepare for virtual interviews as well. Thanks, Gita.
How often do you recommend, or do you in fact recommend that people attending interviews research the interview panel?
So I don't often recommend that, purely because sometimes we don't know who will be on the interview panel. If the company tells you that this will be my interviewer, then go onto LinkedIn, go onto Facebook, research the person. You could find information about them. I've done that previously as well. But if you don't know who the interviewer is, just take it from an HR perspective and know that there will be an HR representative sitting in that interview.
Do you actively encourage the use of AI to help you prep for interviews? And if you do, what do you caution them on?
So very, very important. If you are using AI to research a company, rather get information, link it directly maybe to the company's website. So go onto the company's website because you know that the information provided is legit. It is from the company. So if you're using AI tools, verify it against other forms of research. Don't just take what you find on your AI as being the actual correct information, because AI tools tend to pull information from different sources, and it could actually not give you accurate information. So please back it up by doing additional research.
But you do encourage them to try and use AI to generate
Absolutely.
questions, etc. Okay.
Yes. It is important, but make sure you're backing up your source.
Knowing that you actively or you predominantly deal with youth employment, and understanding that sometimes not all positions are first time or permanent positions. Sometimes they limited duration internship, graduateship programs. Those are often our landing places, the places that we first experience the real world of work for many students or many youth. What would you say a person can do to capitalize on that very first job opportunity, to use what you learned there to traject you forward?
Firstly, I want to say, if you land yourself into that first job opportunity, considering the unemployment rate in South Africa, you are one of the privileged ones to have landed a job. I would say take every work task as an opportunity to learn and grow. Don't say no to work tasks, because that is where your greatest growth comes from. I know in my career, my greatest growth came from moments when my boss would throw me into the deep end and he would give me a task and say, do this task. And you have no idea how to do it and you have to figure it out. So I would then go and do my research, ask my colleagues, and figure out how to do this task. But he actually helped me to grow the most. So take every work task as that opportunity. Just because you've gotten into this work experience program does not mean you will receive a permanent job offer. You have to prove yourself. And the way to do that is through commitment, through timekeeping. And for me, a very important factor would be being curious and learning as much as you can. Ask questions. A valuable employee is one who wants to learn about the whole business, not just your department or role. This concept of it's not my job should not exist. It should be a case of I want to learn as much as I can. So while you are at work, I would say find a mentor, somebody that you work with who you admire and can teach you valuable skills, and learn from this person. Ask them to teach you as much as possible. Remember to keep a learning attitude and to remain humble. That's the most important things. When you come into the workplace, even if you have a degree qualification, the fact is a person who has no qualification but has been working there for 10 years has more to offer that company than you currently have. So learn from them as much as possible. Thanks, Gita.
You know, it's really funny. I started work in 1990. And nobody really believes me now, but I was probably one of the shyest people on the planet. I would talk to nobody ever. And I think I was 3 days into my new job. And my then supervisor gave me this piece of paper and said, go and fax this to this number. And I remember the sheer panic that set in. First of all, I didn't know what a fax machine was. I didn't know where to find this thing. And when I got there, I had no idea what I was going to do with this piece of paper and this machine. And Bryony earlier mentioned the stepping out of your comfort zone. I all of a sudden realized I'm going to have to talk to somebody. I'm going to have to ask for directions. I'm going to have to ask for help. And I'm going to have to learn that I'm now in a workplace where I have to learn to engage with people. And I think that day 3 lesson of there's always somebody willing to help if you're willing to ask. There's always somebody that is teachable and somebody who will teach, and that both parties have the opportunity to impart that both ways. And I think it's something that I carried forward through the rest of my career. I don't know what happened. It was like a switch. I all of a sudden became unafraid to speak in public and to be seen and to know that I don't know everything, and it's all right, because I was only day 3 as an 18-year-old in the world of work. And I think people should recognize that nobody expects you to know everything, and it's okay to show up in your workplace differently.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lastly, and to wrap up in our last 3 minutes, if you had a magic wand, what is the one thing corporates in South Africa would do to make a fundamental difference to the state of employability now?
Thanks, Gita. That is something that can change and contribute positively to our economy. For me, to positively impact unemployment in South Africa, we need to create more employment opportunities. And the only way to create more employment opportunities is from creating more businesses who would contribute positively to the economy. So corporates need to recognize that they work in an ecosystem and not in silos. And something that we at Catalyx promote is supplier enterprise development. So what do I mean? For example, if a corporate usually purchases PPEs for their staff, they can identify a small business that manufactures PPEs and support this business to grow and help this business to then be able to meet the required quality standards that they would need. And then use this small business to become a supplier for their own business. And in turn, that would mean that the small business would grow and create employment and positively contribute to the economy. So if we focused on supplier enterprise development for small businesses, we can create more employment opportunities in South Africa. And then another thing that corporates could look at is we have a lot of SETA-funded interns. Contact your SETAs, find out if they have funded interns that can come into the workplace. This gives young people an opportunity to gain experience in their field of work. And opening up your doors to mentoring and supporting young people to gain this experience is extremely valuable to them becoming more employable, for them to become attractive to other employers. And then, for example, in South Africa, we have Yes for Youth. Get involved in such work experience opportunities for unemployed youth and open up your doors to bring them in to gain that experience. Thanks, Gita.
That's such good advice. Absolutely. If listeners want to get in touch with you, have a look at what jobs you're advertising for, where can they find you guys?
So our jobs would be advertised on our website. That's bluffpersonnel.com. You could also go to catalyx.com, Catalyx with CATALYX.org. And we also have a Facebook and LinkedIn profile, so you can find us on social media as well.
That's awesome. Shavir, thank you so very much for your time and your insights and the great work that you're doing with our youth. It is heartening to see companies and individuals who go beyond the standard recruitment to giving people the very best opportunities to showcase themselves and their skills. So I really applaud you for that, and I'm very grateful for your time today.
Thank you very much, Gita. You have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
This is not just another talk show. It's the pulse check of a working continent. The job market, where policy meets people and numbers meet names. From factories to futures, from data to dignity. We don't just count jobs, we build them. The job market, only on Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover. The conversation becomes a movement. The idea becomes an economy. This is not another event. It's an activation of Africa's potential. The Career Indaba Expo and Bootcamp 2026, where 5,000 delegates, 100 exhibitors, and 20 bootcamp zones collide to create the future of work. From youth innovators to corporate pioneers, from township traders to global brands, every voice counts. 2 days, one goal. Aligning Africa's skills with its opportunities. Career Indaba Expo and Bootcamp 2026. 15th to 16th May, Sandton Convention Center, where skills meet, where Africa works.
Morning, Faye from Edge. How are you guys?
It's Monday. It's good.
Monday, it's great to be at work, right? I always see Faye's things to be grateful for, and the fact that we can be at work is one of those things.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Righty. So thank you so much for joining me. Maybe can you take a minute to just introduce yourselves and what it is that Edge does?
Go for it. So, Edge is an executive search business. We've been going for 14 years now. We work South Africa and Africa, and we'll work your big multinationals, everything from entry level, but I mainly do exec. What do you do, Faye?
But who are you though?
I'm Janice.
So I'm Faye. I'm Chief Growth and Learning Officer here at Edge. I do everything to do with innovation and moving us to the next level, but I also do recruitment.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So you've mentioned that Edge recruits across the board. You've got insight from international partners. You work in Africa. And one of the things that you've noticed is that you see employability as a mindset and not a skill. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, mindset is really all about attitude. You can learn skills, but you need to have the mindset to really propel yourself and secure yourself within this industry or within a industry.
But I also think you can learn to get a job. So I find like a lot of my executives, they don't go for an interview for like 5 years, 10 years, they stay in that role. I think you should always be having interviews on a yearly basis. It's not about leaving, but it's about keeping that skill set fresh. I always say, practice your CV, tell a story to your family, get them to tell you, does it make sense? Are you highlighting your points? Especially our high level guys, they're not going for interviews, so they start noting what's their achievements, what's their weaknesses, what are they working on. This is all stuff that can be taught.
I agree. It's about that continuous benchmarking yourself to be market ready and to really test whether you're compatible with the market before you're in the market. It's about how am I ensuring that I'm ready as a mindset.
Exactly. And Gita, even, a lot of candidates at this time of the year go through retrenchments and stuff, and it's the energy. So I often will say to someone, I'll say, you have to come into the office, we need to talk, because you get down, you think I'm not going to get a job. People feel that. Or you come across as too needy for that job, where people are wanting to want somebody that wants their brand. How many times have you interviewed someone and you say, okay, but what does this company do? And they're like, well, I don't know. It's not about the job. Clients are wanting somebody that loves their brand, wants to come, sees themselves in that position. It's so much more, so much more.
And do you think that speaks to the mindset you're talking about? The fact that I don't know about this job says volumes about my mindset about being employable.
Absolutely. We see that every day. And also another big problem in this country is that people just want a job for job's sake. So, they apply for things that they're not necessarily fit for. So that also goes to show that they're not researching, they're not understanding what it is, or who it is that they want to actually work for.
Over 14 years of business, I am sure you've seen a lot of change. We've been through recessions, we've been through slumps, we've been through COVID, we've been through all sorts of things. So in South Africa specifically, how have you noticed employability changing?
Yeah, that's you. You've been in this business for 14 years.
Okay, so I mean, it has changed a lot. I mean, we started where it was about transformation. Now we've moved on. I'm seeing a new phase now where people are wanting multi-skills. Like, as you can't just be a CA anymore. If you're a CA with data, or you've done something from a data perspective, you're now more. You will get more job opportunities. But also it's mindset. Like, what's your energy? I mean, people have told me don't hire Gen Zs. I'm a pro Gen Z, but there's also a way to work with the Gen Z. There's so many changes in the market. What do you see?
Well, I see a lot of change in the fact that maybe, I don't know how many years ago, but you would be okay just walking into a job with your qualification and not want to know anything more or learn anything more. You know, I'm a CA, like Jen was saying, I'm a CA, I don't need to be anything other than a CA. Those times have changed. You know, we've got obviously the adoption of AI. If you're in any kind of space that utilizes data, you should be, furthering yourself on something regarding data and how you use data to, make better business decisions or whatever the case is. And I think that also comes down to mindset. If you walk into a business and think, well, I've got my qualification, I'm done now, you are very mistaken.
I mean, Gita, I'm sure you remember those days, all those years before, where we would get people, 20, 25% increases on their salaries, just because they have that skill set. Those days are gone. You have to be, it's 10% and 15% if we walk on water and we can get you that offer. But the market has changed so much, and clients now there's more candidates out there for them to pick from. So you really, how are you differentiating yourself? What's your brand? What are you putting out there? Do you have a following on LinkedIn? What do you say? What are you doing self-learning? I mean, at my very old age, I've learned now I have to now start doing self-learning, which is hard, but it's a necessity. I mean, I struggle just with scanning a QR code, and now there's AI.
Yeah, that is so true. And the question remains, are our tertiary institutions and our corporates doing what's necessary to adjust to this shift? And what do you see as the biggest gap in there? Because I personally feel like the answer is no.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think, it's great that people go through tertiary education, but there's no one cheerleading them on to say, okay, well, you're here studying this, but you also need to do further things. You're not just going to leave here with your degree and everything's going to be fine.
But I'll take it even a further step back, and you, Gita, you probably feel the same way. But from the time now kids are in school and they're going into matric and they have to decide what they need to study. And I mean, yeah, I am. I only selected to be an accountant because my maths teacher told me I couldn't. But that's the only reason. Now, here our kids they don't know where are the roles. Like, we've been working with the Miller Association of South Africa, and there's not enough Millers in South Africa. And do our kids know that if you became a Miller, you will always have a job? Or, we've lost our apprentices. Where's our electricians? So I think it starts there on where are the roles? What do you love to do? Technical, I went to a technical school, okay, but I didn't do woodwork, don't worry. But I went to a technical school, but there isn't enough technical schools anymore. We don't have the Boilermakers. We don't have those skill sets. So I think it starts there on, what are jobs in South Africa? Where can you get a job, and what's a best fit for you?
I think a lot of institutions or organizations or industries have glamorized certain jobs. Like if you go back 20 years, IT was all the thing. And everybody knew that if you did IT, you would always have a job. You and us, we know how many IT people are unemployed now. rather glamorize or make a big fuss about the industries or the jobs that nobody talks about, because those are the ones where you're going to always be employed.
You use the word glamorize, and that for me is so key. What is critical and necessary is not sexy. It's not sexy to be a plumber, not at all. Yet AI is unlikely to pitch up at your house and fix your toilet
Correct.
in the near future. It is where there's opportunity, it's where there's need, and it's where we should be. And I think that the more we have these conversations about what's necessary, not what's sexy, the better off our state of employment will actually be. Like, I mean, up until recently, and like Janice says, she's not IT savvy, I battle sometimes with technical recruitment. I don't know the difference between a plumber and a boilermaker quite often. And I often have to research it before I even start. But in reality, I should know that. And I should be speaking about it more in my position as a recruiter, in my position as somebody who deals with youth, and in fact, all of our positions. When we have opportunities, these are conversations that we really, really should be having.
But Gita, even take it a step back. I mean, this is the time of year from September onwards where we start hiring grads for next year. There's a gap here. Graduates don't know how to interview. No one's told them, okay, you need to research, you need to look a certain way. I mean, how many times do you interview someone and they're sitting in their car, or they don't put their camera on? So as a recruiter, we always look at how are you coming to this interview, because that's how you're going to go with our clients. So there's a lack there as well. We're not doing enough to teach our grads how to get a job, how to show up, how to dress. There's so much more that needs to be done.
It all comes back to mindset.
Yes.
It does indeed. But it also comes down to the mindset of the industries who almost the custodians of that knowledge. We kind of need to find a way to impart that. And to be honest, I know that we do this very often. Every grad we interact with that doesn't quite show up the right way, we do spend the time giving them these tips. We do make them self-aware. We kind of help where we can, and that's great, because one-on-one is great, but we can do it on a bigger stage for sure. But there is a role, and it's mindset, where curiosity and lifelong learning come into play, right? And certainly as technology evolves, and I know that Edge are AI adopters. I know that you are forward thinking in terms of the use of AI, specifically not just for recruitment, but for the candidates. So tell me a little bit about that.
This would be you.
Sure. So on the AI side of things, I mean, every interview that I do, I ask, what are your thoughts on AI? And I take it for granted that everyone here has had to adopt my way of thinking, because that's part of the Edge way. But so many people out there are still lacking the knowledge. They're fearful of what it is because they fear that it's going to take their job. And I've said it from day one, AI is not going to take your job, but somebody who knows AI is going to take your job.
But maybe even go down to the CVs. I mean, there's been such a shift where we never had to worry about ATSs and your CVs being bombed out of systems. I mean, I had a high-level person from the Netherlands contact me on Saturday saying, she's not getting a job. And it's because she's got pictures in her CV. So maybe talk to that as well, because, a lot of candidates are losing the opportunity because of that.
Correct. So obviously, I'm all for adopting AI and using it. I actually did a whole series on my LinkedIn recently about how you can use AI to help you with job seeking. But, people have spent lots of money on getting their CVs created professionally for them by, I hate to say it, by a graphic designer, and a graphic designer doesn't understand what a CV really needs to look like. And they give them these beautiful CVs that have got a photo on it, and then they've got text boxes and all these pretty designs. And as far as I'm concerned, unless you're a graphic designer, your CV shouldn't be pretty. So, and then they apply for all these jobs and they say that, they get despondent because they're not hearing anything. And the amount of people that I speak to and I say, and when I'm doing my job readiness programs, is you need to remove all the pretty things from your CV. You need to take your photo off your CV. People are still putting their address, their full addresses on their CVs. Things like that, you know. And I'm like, when it goes through an ATS, which for our listeners is an applicant tracking system, which majority of companies are using these days, whether they're a recruiter or a corporate, you click on apply and it says load your CV. If you're loading a CV full of pictures and text boxes and things like that, the ATS is not going to read it. It actually just falls into a black hole, as we call it, and no one ever gets to see it. So, you know, if you want to help yourself, just create a CV that's in Word and PDF it, and then apply for jobs, and I'm sure you'll get a better response.
You're 100% correct. It's absolutely valuable skills, and that is tips, and because it is so true. So many of us miss opportunities not because we're not good, but because we weren't seen, and we weren't seen because we didn't represent it correctly. But tech has become such a big part of our lives, and you know, like you said, you can't be afraid of it anymore. You've got to use it. And I suppose the question then is, do you think South Africans, both corporates and individuals, are adapting fast enough to this workspace that we find ourselves in?
No, I don't think so. I think that corporate South Africa could be doing a lot more with regards to taking people, you know, into the next, I don't know what you call it, revolution, and doing more AI learning. There should be more free webinars for people to learn. There should be more workshops for people to learn. At the moment, it's so expensive to do an AI course, you know, and people don't know where they can access free learnings. Although, I mean, the internet is full of it. They don't know which ones are good and which ones are going to be identified, or whatever the case is. But there should be more, and there could be more. Because you look at America, I don't know what the stats were. I did a post, I wrote an article a little while ago, and the number eludes me now. But America has set out to train, I think, it's in the millions of people on how to use AI in the next 5 years. There's nothing like that in South Africa.
No.
And it's scary.
It is. And when Janice was talking about earlier, what are we doing in matric? We're looking at, are we looking at doing that then? And you know, I'm also curious about AI. And, you know, we all started with that very first prompt that goes, can you fix my CV? And but in a short space of time, like literally like this, the ability to prompt has been exponentially improved, and in fact could be exponentially improved even if you asked AI to help you improve the prompt. But we don't know that, and we've got to learn that soon, like really soon. We've got to switch on fast.
Correct. And you said there's jobs for prompt engineers.
I know. Ridiculous. And that came about like overnight.
Yes.
Almost. Not quite.
I mean, you see the same thing. Recruitment November last year to this year is a totally different game. It is not recruitment of old. I mean, it's at a different level, and it's fast.
Correct.
You're right. And talking about recruitment of old, that brings me to another point. There's a huge difference between screening in and screening out, and looking for transferable potential. Do you think corporates are doing enough of that? Or do you think we're still looking at little tick boxes that suggest, here's what our profile should look like, and there's the borders, and we're sticking in that?
So I think I'm probably going to be different to you, but in my world, I feel we are still ticking boxes. We're dealing with HR that's got a job spec, and they want an 80% fit with the job spec, where like even in our own business, we're finding if you are hiring a personality and a mindset, you're getting a better fit than I want 8 years work experience, 3 years managerial level. It's really to look at that person who's going to be able to jump to the next. You know, what are they calling it? I was reading a whole lot of articles this weekend about the next level. But we still ticking boxes.
It's that adaptability.
Yes.
You want someone in your business who's adaptable. You know, I always joke that I started here 18 months ago as the marketing manager and business development. My role is totally not that anymore.
And it's probably going to change by December again.
Yeah. but it's because I found somewhere in the business that needed something different, and I really just carved my role into that. And now, obviously, I head up innovation and anything else that takes us to the next level. But you need more people like that in every business.
You're so right. And the roles that we are hiring for now may not exist in a year or two from now. And do we want a workforce that knows how to do this? Or do we want a workforce that is flexible and has a learning agility to move into changing roles much quicker than we have in place currently? That's, I suppose, that to me sounds like the sustainable question.
Our clients are wanting candidates that can pivot. So you start in one thing, can you pivot to the next? Where's the next gap? What value are you adding? So it's all coming down to value add.
Absolutely. So if you could change one thing about how people approach their careers, what would that be? One each.
Well, I mean, we've said it time and time again today, and that's about mindset. But I think that if you are, I'm of the belief that if you want a job, you will get a job, and if you put your mind to it, you'll get there. You have to make finding a job a job.
I agree with that. So like often people that have lost their job or whatever, I'm like, get up. And that's how when I started Edge, it was the same story. And Gita, I'm sure it was the same as you. Get up, put your suit on, and look for a job. You can learn to get a job. You can study to be the best in an interview, but it's that, once again, that mindset. Get up, put your suit on, and start searching.
Correct.
It's a job to find a job.
Even if you're sitting at the kitchen table, you got to dress up, show up. That old saying, get up, show up, whatever the case is. But that's it. You've got to do it every single day. Don't sleep until 10 and think that you're going to log on in your pajamas and find yourself a job, and then knock off or log off at 2 o'clock, and the rest of the day you're going to chill out with your friends. That's not how it works.
And obviously it's all about brand. I'm sure, Gita, you're not, because I was at the petrol station yesterday, and I saw someone get out in her pajamas, and I was like, wow, okay, we could never do that. It's our brand. We're not getting out to go and buy a packet of chips in our pajamas. So it's brand awareness, it's how you show up, it's mindset, it's anything's possible if you want it.
And be open to learn.
Okay, and we've got 2 minutes left. For companies, what do you think is the one thing they could do to nurture employability in their own teams?
So I've got this softness for grads. I think for me, I think more corporate South Africa should actually take grads on and actually teach them something. It's not just about the tax break or anything else. Can we actually impart knowledge into our grads? And that's going to be the first change in the country for me. It was different.
Well, I completely agree with Janice, but one thing that we adopted this year is we put self-development as part of your KPI. So that you are kind of forced into it, because now you have to, you've got to show up on that part of your KPI, and it has made the world of difference. People are learning skills that are going to, better the industry, better themselves in their role. It's quite fun because everyone has to report back on their self-learning as well.
And anyway, it's even made me want to do self-learning. So, which it's necessary. It's really necessary, and and it's measurable.
That's a very nice KPI. I do something similar. I also expect there to be a certain amount of learning. In fact, we tie it nicely to achieving your APSO CPD points, which you guys do as well. And all of that stuff contributes to that. And it covers 2 birds with 1 stone. But we also have a book club. We read together every Thursday, that we chat about how it applies in our business. We actively encourage looking for very different things to apply learning, because learning doesn't always have to be this formal course that we do. There's many ways to learn. So yes, you guys are great. Your business is awesome. How do people find you if they want to see what roles you're applying for?
So the best way, thank you very much for
I think they are stuck. So let me give you their stuff. You can find them on www.edgeexec.co.za. You can follow Faye Emerson or Janice Wagner on LinkedIn. They share job specs all of the time. And Faye, like she said, posts many articles, tips, series on how you can improve your skills in the job market. So that's a wrap for them. And I'd like to just take this moment to sum up all of our talks, to close off with what it is that I do, and then we are good for this first lot of Impact Week Boardroom Takeover. So I'm Gita Winter. I am the Director of Performability Recruitment. I have recruited for about 16 years now across multiple sectors. I also am the founder of Recruiters Care, which is an initiative that allows recruiters a bigger platform to give back. Much of the work we do is in all of the things we've been talking about across all of these talks, helping students and youth develop personal brands, improve their CVs, gain workplace skills. It's something that I'm incredibly passionate about and something that is strongly supported by APSO, which I'm very, very grateful for. On that note, I am a board member of APSO. I am a lifelong avid, what's the word I'm looking for? Avid person who actively joins and advocates for professionalism in our industry, and something that I am strongly passionate about and something that I will strive to make a difference in. Janice, sorry, I saw you guys got stuck, so I have given them your LinkedIn profile and your web address so that they can catch you on there. And I was just wrapping up how common all the conversations were in terms of thinking about your mindset, looking at where you're getting stuck yourselves, being curious and looking at your brands and how you tell your own stories. So that was a common theme. And that there are very similar things corporates can do in terms of giving back, in terms of fostering growth and development, in terms of taking on grads. Those have also been very common themes across all of these workshops. But one of the things that I loved about yours, and in closing off, is that we own our own stories. Only we can make decisions. Only we can change our own mindsets, and only we can make us often are in control of how we react and how we behave.
There it goes again.
And those are absolutely critical to what it is that we need to do now. So Faye, Janice, thank you again for always being willing to step up and help. Thank you for the extra stuff that you do. I know you guys employ grads. I know you guys go out and do lots of workshops and talks and to give back in your spaces. And I'm genuinely grateful for your time here this morning and for everything that you do in our market. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Okay. And folks, that's a wrap for day one of Impact Week. We hope you got value from this. We hope that you tune in every day and from every session, because there is so much you can learn across so many topics this week. Hope you all have a lovely Monday, great week ahead. Take care, everyone.
This is not just another talk show. It's the pulse check of a working continent. The job market, where policy meets people and numbers meet names. From factories to futures, from data to dignity. We don't just count jobs, we build them. The job market, only on Career Indaba Impact Week, the Boardroom Takeover.